And call the meeting to order. This is October the 4th, 2012. This is our regular work session meeting. We have a special guest tonight that is going to help us out a little bit and sing America the Beautiful. And what we will do is we will stand, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. We will have Miss Bustos sing America the Beautiful, and then we will have the invocation all standing, if that's okay. So if you will, go ahead and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm the marketing director for Cameron Hall Assisted Living, so I greet you on behalf of Joanne Savage. How about that? Join me. I'm going to sing the first part of the song that you know, and then I'll sing another verse. How about that? You know it goes, "Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesty above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness, and every gain divine. Woo!
Jack, would you give the invocation, please?
May we bow. Father, we do thank you for the blessings you've given us. What a wonderful country to live in, the freedom that we all have, the beautiful day that you've given us today. And we ask that you be with all of us here tonight and help us to perform all of our duties and to represent our city. All these things we pray in your name. Amen.
I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight. We have a proclamation that we do begin the meeting with here. I'm going to ask Brandon Roberts if he would come forward, please. We'll present this to him. This is Fellowship of Christian Athletes Day, whereas since 1954, the Fellowship of Christian Athletes has been challenging coaches and athletes on the profession, college, high school, junior high, and youth levels to use the powerful medium of athletics for Christian fellowship. And whereas the Fellowship of Christian Athletes is the largest Christian sports organization in America and focuses on serving local communities by equipping, empowering, and encouraging people to positively impact the world through the example of Christ. And whereas the four main values taught by FCA are integrity, service, teamwork, and excellence. And whereas on October the 10th, 2012, parents, students, and coaches will come together on their local high school athletic fields for an event called Fields of Faith, presenting an opportunity for students to share their testimonies with one another. Fields of Faith was started in 2002 in Oklahoma and has now grown to become a nationwide FCA ministry. Now therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Canton do hereby designate Wednesday, October the 10th, 2012 as Fellowship of Christian Athletes Day in Canton, Georgia, on the occasion of their 3rd annual Fields of Faith event. You certainly may.
Well, thank you for that. I do want to take this opportunity to invite all of you to the Fields of Faith next Wednesday night at 7 o'clock at Cherokee High School, and I hope to see all of you there, as well as the community. It's a community event for all ages, and it is an event that I believe will change your life, so I do hope that you will plan on being there. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Okay, I would ask for consideration to approve the agenda. I would like to make one note here. The discussion of the Main Street Work Program funding, they've asked to move this to our November work session. So I would like to amend the agenda if someone would include that. Also, that would be item 7B. Would like to move that forward, postpone that until the work session of November. And item number 8B, T-Mobile, discussion of T-Mobile Tower T-Mobile Tower attachment lease amendment. That will be, I assume, moved until a later date. Okay. So those two items. Do we have another?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to ask for consideration of moving new business item A, the presentation regarding the homestead option sales tax, to right after we approve what we're doing.
Right, okay. At the beginning, we'll just move it to the next item on the agenda prior to the 10-minute public input, if that's okay. We could do that. That's okay, but we have Harry Johnson, Commissioner Johnson's here, and he's gonna take the lead in that. So, do I have a motion to amend the agenda, or are there other items that need to be? A motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Okay. So, Commissioner Johnston, if you would come forward, and the item to be discussed there is the presentation regarding the homestead option sales tax.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me here. I know you'll be disappointed that I did not bring a 30-slide PowerPoint presentation. Instead, what I have is a one-page, you'll see it's a rather full page, but a one-page fact sheet on this subject. I'm going to pass it to you and around the folks in the room. What I'd like to do, if you're willing, is just talk through these facts, answer your questions that you may have, engage in any discussion you wish to have. If you have the time and the willingness, perhaps people who are here at your meeting would have questions that we could also try to answer. Do you mind passing it? This is not a sales pitch. This is really just, as I say, a fact sheet. It's what the host is a 1% sales tax that would be used to reduce property taxes. So it's really just whether the voters and taxpayers wish to take advantage of the opportunity to trade an additional sales tax, penny sales tax on the dollar, in place of an equal dollar amount of reduction in property taxes. So if they choose to do so, that's fine with me. I plan to vote for it, but if those who don't, that's fine. If they win today, we'll carry on with the system we have today. So what is a host? Well, you just said the name, homestead option sales tax. It's a 1% local sales tax, would bring our sales tax in Cherokee County to 7%. There is a better known and more widely used variation called the LOST, local option sales tax. Actually, 154 counties in Georgia currently have a LOST, which is similar to a host, but there are three primary differences that I've outlined here. One is that with a host, first priority for the property tax reduction goes to homeowners, homestead exempt property. That is owner-occupied residential property for which a homestead exemption has been applied for and granted. So it makes it kind of important. In the past, the homestead exemption has only been worth about $50 in savings on your property taxes. It will now be worth a good bit more if this passes. And then any spillover after those properties are fully offset goes to other classes of properties. And I'll talk in a minute about how much money there is and how much would spill over and so forth. A couple of other differences. One is that a lost requires that 100% of the proceeds of the sales tax be used for property tax reduction. With a host, it's only an 80% requirement, with 20% allowed to be used for county capital expenditures like roads and parks and buildings and equipment. The county commission has passed a resolution committing to use 100% though anyway, and asking future boards of commissioners to do the same, at least as long as there's a SPLOST in place. Our feeling is that if there's a SPLOST in place, which is already a penny sales tax used for capital expenditures, there's really no need for any portion of this to go toward capital expenditures. And the last one is one that may be of particular interest to you, and you may want to talk about that further, and we can do so. Maybe we hold that till we kind of work through these other facts first. And that is that a loss is shared with the cities, between the county and the cities on a negotiated basis. The host, at least for the portion that's used for property tax rollback, which in our case would be 100%, is not shared with the cities. If any is used for capital, that portion can be shared with the cities. There will be two questions on the ballot, and that's confusing to some people. The Georgia Constitution requires separate votes on these two items. One is to create any new tax, requires, or at least any new local tax, requires a vote of the voters, as well as a separate vote to establish any new exemption from taxes. So what we're doing is, first of all, approving that we'll have this 1% sales tax, and then second, that it'll be used in the manner prescribed by host. That is, first priority goes to homestead exempt properties, and then the rest goes to others. So what taxes will be offset? To make sure everybody understands, this will not offset, unfortunately, all our property taxes. It will only offset the county M&O property tax. That is, it won't offset school taxes, which of course for most people is the biggest component of taxes, and it won't offset the county fire district tax, and it won't offset, because there's no sharing with the cities, it will not offset city taxes. So it's really only going to offset the county M&O tax on your tax bill. And then how much will that be? So how much will that reduction be? The average home value in Cherokee County is now about $155,000. With a 40% assessment and a $5,000 homestead exemption already, that doesn't go away anyway, that's about $335, unfortunately, not $1,000, $335 a year in property taxes for county M&O. So that's what the typical homeowner would save. More valuable homes would save more. Less expensive homes would save less. In addition to that, the total tax will produce about $30 million a year. That is enough under the current tax digest and tax rates to fully offset all the county M&O tax for homestead exempt property and about 70% of all other real property. So there's enough as it stands today to spill over, so to speak, and offset the county M&O tax for business property, rental property, investment property, agricultural property, to the extent of about 70%. I'm going to talk in a minute about how that could change, which I guess is maybe the next point. Can these savings be guaranteed forever? And the answer is no. It's really dependent on how much tax money comes in. But one thing about Cherokee County is with this 70% surplus, so to speak, to begin with, that goes to offset other properties, it would take a rather dramatic change in the cost of county business, the tax digest, or the receipts under this host for it to offset, for it to be reduced enough so that homeowners would ever again start paying county M&O tax. So we start with a very large cushion for the homeowner anyway. Now that offset is much more at risk for non-homestead property. It could decline. And one of the things that could make it decline I've got this a little farther down, but I'll mention it now. Starting 1st of next year, really I think in April of next year, cars will no longer be sales taxable. And that includes local. State and local taxes will no longer be paid on cars when you buy them. However, instead, you'll pay an approximately equal amount when you go to title the car. It'll just be classified as a fee. All that money goes to the state, none comes to any local governments. So in a sense, the state has sort of captured that part of the sales tax revenue for helping to balance the state's budget. But as a result of that, if $30 million is the current receipt, and that's based on SLOST receipts today, and that includes car sales taxes. It could come down a little. Now, nobody really knows how much. We don't really have good information as to how much that is. I can't imagine it will be more than 10%, but still, it could be enough to notice. Maximum size and value. People have asked about that. Like, what if you have $1 million home? No maximum for this purpose. No matter how valuable a home is, it would still be first in line, along with all other homestead exempt property, to receive this benefit before any goes to any other classes of property. How big? There is a limit on size of property. So for folks who have a very large residential lot, over 5 acres, only the first 5 acres, the house and the first 5 acres will be considered homestead exempt for this purpose. Now that means the excess, if you're on a 20-acre parcel, the other 15 will be considered non-homestead property. It'll still be eligible for a credit against property taxes, but only like business and investment property at a lesser and more variable amount. How much will it cost? So if you're going to save, if the typical household is going to save $335, how much does it cost? Well, obviously that depends on how much you spend in taxable goods. But if you're saving $335, you would have to spend, I think I've got a typo in here. I adjusted one number, not another. I'm sorry about that. But that would actually be $33,500. I used a slightly higher number because I started with a slightly different tax savings amount. So if you don't spend more than $33,500 in taxable purchases, you'd still be saving money. And as a practical matter, most homeowners should save money this way, because what's happening is non-homeowners are paying really more than their share. Let's just call a spade a spade. Renters probably do not financially benefit from this. Homeowners do. But there is an advantage to everyone, and that is that people from outside the county will also contribute when they shop here in the county, and they're doing that more and more. It used to be we all went outside the county to do our shopping. More and more people are not only shopping in the county, but coming into the county. And with the opening of the new outlet mall down at Woodstock, that will also be another source of significant sales tax revenue. Couple of points about the savings. One to remember is that groceries are not, while groceries are exempt from state sales tax, they are not exempt from local sales taxes. So you will pay this extra penny on every dollar of groceries purchased. I've already talked about the cars. And one other factor is that property taxes are, for itemized income tax filers, property taxes are deductible, whereas sales taxes are not. So there's a little, the income tax is going to eat into whatever net savings you have there. Now the last thing gets a little complicated, and that is the timing of getting this thing going. The first part of it is not complicated, and that is that if it's passed in November, barring unforeseen circumstances, the sales tax would become effective in April of 2013. Now the question then is, okay, when would I start seeing some credit on my tax bill? The state law, the state host law, actually says that counties can collect the tax for one partial year, any partial year, as well as one full year, and only begin rebating credits against property taxes the next year. So we could go almost 2 years before we had a credit, but we have resolved and committed not to do that. We have resolved and committed to an immediate beginning of that credit. And we would do so on this basis. That is, when if the tax becomes effective April 1st, we would get that money from the state. It takes about a month to get that from the state. So sometime in May, we'd get a check from the state. And in June, we'd get another check from the state. By the end of July, we have to set the millage rates. So we probably, in that first year, would have, by a 30-day cutoff before the setting of the millage rate, we'd probably only have 2 months of collections. But whatever we had in hand, we would use and calculated credit back on, against property tax payers. For the second year, we would have a full 12 months of receipts. But there's another factor that's a little bit confusing, and that is that the host law, because it doesn't become fully effective for this first partial year and then the first full year, legal opinion we have is that we can't give homeowners the priority in those first 2 years. We can only begin giving homeowners top priority in the second full year, in a sense, the third year of the program. Which means that for the first partial year and the first full year, the credit will have to be distributed pro rata across all properties. So good for business and rental properties, not quite as good for homeowners. What it amounts to is about, instead of 100% credit in the first year, of course the first year is going to be a partial year anyway. We estimate about a 15% credit for everyone, homeowners and other properties as well. In the second year, it looks like it would be about an 85% credit, unless the amount of collections drops off substantially because of something like a lot of car sales that we couldn't figure out. So about an 85% credit the second year. The third year should be for homeowners 100% and 50, let's say 50 to 70% for other properties. Right now it would be 70 based on the numbers we have at hand, but to be a little bit more conservative, let's assume about 50%. So that's really, that's what I've got to say about it. I just wonder what questions or comments you have, and if you would be so willing to open the floor. Yes, sir, Mr. Rush.
Just one question, from a city's perspective, why not LOSD instead of HOSD?
There you go. I just had a feeling that one. and it's a great question, really. And as a city resident, I went into this discussion favoring lost for that very reason. And there are several reasons. One is the complexity of the negotiation has been very difficult because, I mean, if you've read the papers, you know, around the state, lots of cities and counties are now in court trying to settle this thing. It's not even, for SPLOST, we have some guidelines. SPLOST, the law says you start with population, but you negotiate from there. For LOST, it says you don't have to start with population. You can use any basis you want. You can make up a new basis. You can do whatever you want. So it's nearly impossible for cities and counties to come to an agreement. And they have to do that every 10 years. But the more significant thing has to do with what amounts to a double savings that city taxpayers end up getting if it is shared, say, on a population basis. And it's a little complicated to talk about that. My first reaction was, well, if I'm a city resident, I pay extra tax, you know, to the city, why shouldn't that extra tax be reduced as well? And an argument can be made for that. Now, non-city residents don't like that argument as much as I do, but still, that argument can be made. Here's where it kind of breaks down, though, and that's on the fire tax. We're not using this, we don't believe we can use it, and we're certainly not planning to use it to offset the county fire tax. Well, fire service for the cities, at least the cities of Canton and Woodstock, is embedded in the city tax rate. So what would happen is that unincorporated residents would not be receiving any benefit with regard to their fire tax, whereas city residents would be receiving a benefit with regard to the fire portion of their city tax. So there would, in fact, be some double benefit in a loss if it was shared on a population-weighted basis for the city. So that's really, as a city representative, I can't really expect you to like that answer, but that is the answer. That's the reason we ended up choosing to go with the host.
If you have the loss for City of Canton and our sales tax goes up by a penny and it doesn't go up in Holly Springs or Woodstock, I would be an idiot to buy something here in Canton.
Well,
I'd go somewhere else and save the penny, particularly if I'm buying some serious stuff.
Sure, and then that raises a great question that obviously I didn't make clear in the beginning. This would be a county-wide 1 cent sales tax, not just in the city of Canton. It would be throughout the county. And as I said, 154, there are 159 counties in the state. 154 have a lost, and 2 presently have a host. So there are 3 counties in the state, only 3 out of 159, that don't have one or the other. So it would put Cherokee County on a footing with 156 of the other counties in Georgia in terms of the sales tax. Now, one of those that doesn't is our neighbor Cobb County. So it would give, potentially, arguably, a competitive advantage to merchants in Cobb County. Now Cobb, I happen to know, is looking at a host right now. I think they're gonna proceed with it. That would leave only Gwinnett and I forget the other. Gwinnett is one of the others now. I forget. Well, with Cherokee, of course, that's the third. So that would leave only Gwinnett as at that time without. So and they'd all have 7%. Well, there are a few counties that don't have a SPLOST right now. So there are a few that are at 6%. None of our immediate neighbors are at 6% except Canton.
What has been the primary basis for allocation? Value of property? I mean, you can look at the tax digest for Canton and Holly Springs, and it all equals 100%, and you do the math. So if we've got more valuable property here, shouldn't we be getting more benefit than Holly Springs, let's say?
Well, the allocation of credit will be based on the value of your home, yes. So if you have a more valuable home, you will get more credit. And it will be based on really the county M&O tax that you pay, which is based on the value of your home. So if you have a very expensive home and you're paying $3,000 a year in county M&O tax, then you'll save $3,000 a year. If you have an average home and you're paying $335 a year, you'll save $335 a year. So I guess that applies city by city, but more importantly applies home by home. And then, as I say, anything that's left after county M&O tax has been wiped out for homestead exempt property will be used to apply to the county M&O tax for all other types of property.
Has that ever happened in any of the other counties?
The other counties are struggling to have just enough for their homes, but the numbers we have indicate that we can easily do that, and with a large cushion for contingencies such as if car sales eat into that pretty significantly. So, because right now, with the numbers in place today, with a $30 million collection and the current county digest and rates, we could offset 100% of all the homestead exempt property and 70% of all other property.
Do any of the council members have any question or comment? You did a good job there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for letting me come.
Sure. Thank you for being here. Now we'll go into the 10-minute public input period, and we have Louis Klein and Stan Rogers from the Canton PDA.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Thanks for allowing us to speak tonight. My name is Stan Rogers. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Canton Downtown Development Authority, along with board member Louis Klein, and we have Zach Kell, another board member in the audience, and our theater manager, Mr. Bob Siegel. We're here tonight, just for those of you that don't know, and I'm sure everyone does, the Canton Downtown Development Authority is tasked with managing the theater here in town. And we have a proposal tonight to present to council and you, Mr. Mayor, on making some system upgrades so that we will be able to show movies in the theater, and at the same time upgrade some components there that need it pretty badly. This is something that we've looked at several times. It was first brought to our attention by Councilman Goodwin probably, I don't know how long, a couple years ago? Yeah, okay, before my time. But it's something that we've looked at off and on over the years, and up until recently, it just didn't make sense because having volunteers on the board, essentially trying to manage the theater and get operations up, bring in more acts, it was quite a commitment to add something else to the repertoire, so to speak. So we just, all money aside, it just didn't make sense from that standpoint. But last spring, we hired Bob Seguin, who has just been phenomenal in helping us with the management of the theater. I can't say enough good about Bob. He's really been a blessing to all of us. But we have a proposal. We've been looking at this. We formed a subcommittee with myself, Louis, and Zach. We put something together. We'd like to submit it. Louis is going to walk you through it very topically. It's something that you guys can look at your leisure, and we'll answer any questions that we can tonight if you have any. I'll turn it over to Louis.
Thank you. If you'll turn to page 3 in our executive summary. And, over the last 4 years, the Canton Downtown Theater has experienced a strong growth in overall potential, revenues, and economic development and revitalization of downtown Canton. And the theater has gone virtually from 0 revenues to no shows being booked to a schedule that has a wide variety of concerts, from gospel, country, bluegrass, to all types of plays, to a number of special events, comedy shows, weddings. We have a lot of weddings in the theater, meeting area on a weekly basis now. And the theater has become one of the most consistent entertainment venues for the downtown Canton area at this particular time. And as a result, has become a very stable economic engine for our downtown area. And as Stan has mentioned, through a collaborative effort through the City of Canton and the Downtown Development Authority, we've been able to financially support a part-time employee, Mr. Bob Siegwin, and who has a vast amount of theatrical management experience. And we hired Bob in March of 2012, this year. And through his guidance, just through March, the Canton Theater has hosted over 5,000 people in the theater because of Bob's leadership and being able to constantly book venues on a weekly basis in the theater. And in addition to that, the theater is now open to the public Tuesday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. so people can come in and see such a beautiful theater. It's on National Historic Landmarks. And we're able to sell a lot of advanced show tickets now, which has also increased our attendance at all the shows with Bob being on the premises. And as Stan has said, just recently we've formed a theater equipment committee to recommend upgrades and enhancements to our current audio and video capabilities. And so we're conducting this proposal tonight. Not only is it for movies, but it gives us a wide variety of opportunity to host business seminars, as the system is fully PowerPoint capable and all types of business applications. So now we can begin tapping that market throughout the week, not just on weekends, to host other events in the theater. And the overall integration of the system would be great. It would make us more seamless productions, and really would put forth a reputation of professionalism that we're striving for the theater, and it allows us to draw more quality productions and be able to upgrade the talent and the shows that are coming into the theater. Schedule and potential on page 5. Our ideal time just to show movies in the theater is on First Friday weekends. That could be a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It could be a Thursday, Friday. We certainly would do a Thursday, Friday. The reason for that is because Saturdays and Sundays after the First Friday, because of the First Friday event in downtown Canton, is only limited to concerts. We can't have theatrical performance in the theater because people have to have time to set up their stage. And the noise from the event on the Friday night, which is a great event in downtown Canton, is just a distraction for performers. And we do have some handicap accessibility issues with such a big event going on the streets of Canton. And also the summertime would be an ideal time to show many types of movies in the theater, how film festivals, how children's festivals while school is out, and even be able to have day camps for kids in the theater that includes a film. Minimal showing times is anywhere between 2 times a month to show a movie up to 5 times a month. It all depends on whatever we can have booked on Saturday and Sunday after the First Friday. So we're striving to have a very minimal of 3 times per month, excluding summertime, which will be much more. So we can have events through the week and not just limited to the weekends, and again, kids around. Estimated revenues. The DDA has spent probably more time on this than any other part, which includes, as Stan has mentioned, we formed a committee in 2010 that included community questionnaires, interviews with existing venues in the North Georgia area that already shows movies, and a study of the additional liability and expenses associated with having movies in the theater. The movies itself is a break-even to minimal profit margin. The people that it draws will have a quantitative value, which will be hard to determine. Those people who do go see a movie that shop in downtown, and especially eat in downtown, would have a substantial benefit. The real return is accomplished through the enhancements, which were briefly discussed in the executive summary, and then we'll focus on just a little bit later. And just on average, as a very conservative estimate, we're looking at probably a net profit of around $150 just per movie show. And if we show 3 movies, it's $429. That's net, that's after expenses, cost, and especially royalties on the movies, which is a big expense that has to be paid. And again, I do believe that's a conservative effort. We want to be conservative on that. The real revenue potential, as outlined on page 7, is in sponsorship programs. Being able to advertise a year in advance, having movies on certain set nights with opportunities of other movies will allow us sponsorships, and that could be significant revenue. And in a sponsorship program, we'll be able to offer people who are interested in purchasing a sponsorship free tickets, and we'll be able to offer a package in which those companies can then give to their clients as a business development opportunity, especially on a ticket basis. So we expect sponsorships to be strong. Corporate meetings and seminars with the equipment. Again, we turn down bookings all the time from companies because we do not have the capability to do a PowerPoint presentation or any type of business application in the theater. Fundraisers is a big potential. Children's film festivals, especially in the summertime, as mentioned, is a very big money maker. And concessions. All the concessions for anything shown in the theater will be handled by the theater itself and by the DDA. So all of those revenues are retained within the theater. Advantages and disadvantages. This is what it really boils down to on page 8. Expanded sources of revenue for the Canton Downtown Development Authority. Expanded entertainment options for patrons. At this present time, a lot of theaters in the state of Georgia are switching to a hybrid system. A hybrid system meaning they're adding audio and video equipment so they can show movies and not just plays and concerts in order to increase revenues. The biggest one, increased traffic flow for shop owners, which obviously increases sales tax revenue as more people are in downtown. Again, corporate bookings, a fully automated and integrated system, which would allow for a more professional production of all varieties. Again, it's a sign of professionalism within the theater, and we'll be able to draw even higher quality productions and shows than what has already been experienced in the last 1 to 2 years. And in addition, the audio and visual equipment to show movies and for the expanded business applications requires a lot of automation. That is something not limited to movies. Right now, the theater has a lot of aging equipment, and a lot of it needing repair. And because to be able to show movies requires a lot of automation. You've got to be able to pretty much mash a button, curtains open, screens drop, lights dim. Present time, that's really 4 different functions in the theater. Bob's going to be going around all over the theater trying to do that all at once. So it requires a lot of integration. That is not integration that is not only can be needed and experienced just for showing movies. That is also can equally be used by concerts, people who put in concerts, be able to do that off the touch of a button. And obviously for business applications, you You certainly want to be able to just touch a button for a screen to come down and the lights dim in order to show a PowerPoint presentation. And the equipment needed to do this has multiple uses, not only just for movies, but we think as a DDA that it will not only service the potential to show movies and business applications, but to service all audio and visual needs in the theater, regardless of the event, for the next 10 years or plus. It will have to be state of the art, and especially in today's times it shows movies, and everybody will be able to take advantage of that. Disadvantages is always the initial investment. But as most business owners know, it takes money to make money. So this is what we're asking for. The movies themselves, again, have a minimal cash flow just for the movie venture. The real profits are realized through the sponsorships and other bookings and the expanded capability that the theater will have. And again, one thing that we've got to look at, if more people coming into the theater and showing movies, we've got to look at some additional expenditures, some additional cleaning that is required, some supplies, additional utilities, and even some to run concessions, control the system, and even to sell tickets in advance for the shows. Somebody to be in the box office. On page 10 is the budget request. Before we look at the numbers, I'll have to draw your attention to the bottom. There is minimal specs that are required in order to put this equipment in the theater. That the committee has established a 220-inch diagonal screen, some stabilizers. You don't want to get seasick when the air comes on. The screen moving. At least a 6,000 lumen projector, how bright shows. An HD TV receiver along with an off-air antenna for HD reception. We might want to host a Georgia-Florida game there. That would draw a lot of people. We can get that signal free with an antenna. It's on open air. Yeah. Stage boxes for microphones and monitors. Some of the upgrades, obviously, we've got to have a good subwoofer in the theater so you can hear that thumping noise and feel it when you show a movie. We've got to have a new soundboard to replace the existing board, which is damaged and certainly is needed for the sound portion for the movies. Some touchscreen automation. Again, we've got to integrate all of our lights and all of our sounds for easier access, not only for this, but for all applications in the theater. So that would, and that's actually an easy upgrade. And the system itself has to have a minimal 1080p high definition, of course it's digital, and with a minimal 5.1 Dolby digital surround sound. The minimal, in today's standards, a lot of shows are being done in 7.1 Dolby. Most of them are still done in 5.1. Budget that we're proposing is for the equipment, which you can review, a Coke dispenser. You can't have movies without having some type of beverage. Popcorn, gotta have popcorn in the theater for movies. Some additional help if needed. Even though we're going to rely the best we can on volunteers and seek volunteers, when we do a sponsorship and we're saying we're going to show a movie this night and we sell that sponsorship, whether volunteers are there or not, we have to have people to do the show. So we got to build in a contingency for a little help if that part is needed. Some initial supplies, we've got to buy popcorn, little popcorn cans, things of that. And there's small expense. Not everybody drinks Coke, I drink coffee, so we've got to have a coffee machine in there. So the overall request is the bottom line as represented as part of the proposal.
Louis, on the build digital surround sound, that is fitted for that size of theater. It's not going to blow anybody out or be under. So it says minimal. I'm sure you all looked into it, but that is
correct. One of the things that the committee has got to make sure is that we have the right projector. I mean, the minimal is a 6,000 lumen. 8,000 may be too bright for a small venue. 4,000 may be not bright enough, and we will have people on site to bring in the equipment to show us before to make sure that it is the right type of projector. The speaker system, we cannot have two independent speaker systems, and that's the reason we're talking about integration. There can only be one speaker system. Half the speakers in the theater are fine and can be used now as part of the speaker system. Biggest part of the speakers that we need now is some surround sound speakers for the surround sound effect in the theater. So it will be one speaker system. We're very conscious as the aesthetic look in the theater to make sure those speakers are, fit in a stored theater. And the speakers themselves are actually about that size. They're very small. You pump out a lot of sound on a small speaker.
On page 6, did I read this right? It has 55 tickets sold, and then down here, the average, only 1/3 of the seats sold. Is that 55?
That is 55 for a theater.
Okay. So capacity would be,
Maximum capacity is 170 plus. We can book an additional 20 people in the theater with additional seating that we set up. Our code capacity is 225.
and upstairs?
That is, we can put people upstairs. We do not have permanent seating.
That's not planned. That 170 is planned for downstairs.
That is, the 170 is a permanent seating on the floor.
Louis, going back to the projector, the difference in the cost between a 4, 6, and an 8, and we don't know which one is going to be required, so we selected 6 to be in the middle.
We haven't selected any yet.
Okay, is there any significant difference in the price going from a 4 to a 6 and so forth?
There is.
So this could be meaning we need an 8.
I think we've got the consensus opinion that probably not, that the 6 would be the worst case, which is how we tried to give it as far as the promotion, that we're trying to optimize everything. There's still good people running to say,
Louis, under normal conditions, going back to my business experience, if something had a 10-year payback, you wouldn't even consider it. But the theater is not the normal business experience. The theater is something that's a cultural draw for downtown Canton. And, I think from just going to some of your meetings and listening what you folks have gone through, I think upgrading the entire sound system and doing this is going to be significant for the development of downtown Canton. And I think, personally, I'm all for it.
Thank you, Councilman. Yes, it is. The theater is break even. There's 170 seats. A lot of times we can get 200 people in the theater for an event, and we often have, as long as we don't see fire marshal code. And but the theater has a pro and con to it. The pro is it has 170 seats. The con to it, it has 170 seats. So you hope to sell a lot of those seats. Pro to it, and what we hear from the people who's attended events and the performers, is that it is intimate, it is great acoustically. When you have a concert in the theater, you're buying a backstage pass with it too. You can reach out and touch whoever's performing, and they're right in the front so you can shake their hand. The theater is an economic engine, and our goal is for a revenue neutral. If we can cover our expenses, including this, over the course of time, then that's their goal.
Louis, how do you see the movies being advertised, promoted in the community? Because I think that's a real key to getting a lot of people out and getting the numbers up there for sure.
It is, and at the moment, we're trying to decide. I think the consensus at the moment is we definitely want to try to show a movie on Thursday and Friday. And that's definitely what we would promote, because that's what we can almost guarantee on the first Fridays of each month. And that's how we would promote it. As far as sponsorships, we would have to have access, and I think we do have enough access in order to advertise, free advertising locally, and with the email blasts in order to promote movies. The thing about First Friday, and this is the nice thing about the voting, we already have a built-in audience for movies on First Friday. You've got a slew of people already walking the streets. So all you have to do is get them interested in buying a ticket. And the movie on Friday wouldn't be shown till 8 o'clock, so it'll be shown at the end of the event. So First Friday is key, not only to enhance what is already going on First Friday events, but to keep people in downtown after the event is over. A real enhancement to our restaurants.
You had mentioned that there are some businesses or associations that have already questioned the use of the theater. What level are we looking at there? That as soon as we put the word out, potential they're going to be coming right back and saying, finally, we've got something there. So are we looking at a sizable number or something that can offset some of this? Or?
Certainly so. I think once word gets out, and it's through advertisement, it's through the mouth, we've got a lot of great businesses, not only in Canton, but in Cherokee County and surrounding areas. And once we get that word out, we think we can at least book 2 business seminars a month of some sort of capacity. Now, on theatrical productions, revenues are generated as a percentage of ticket sales. So this would be a flat fee, a flat rate that we would charge those events, unless they want to use it the whole day long, we'll charge them.
Jack, you have a question?
I just want to thank the DDA for their hard work on this. They've done some background on it prior, but you all took the ball and ran with it, and the theater manager, Bob, has done a great job. I will mention that I have talked to some companies about sponsorships, and I've had very positive feedbacks on that already.
That's great.
Sure.
Do we still have fire or building code issues in that building? Are we in full compliance throughout the building, or do we still have some unaddressed or unresolved building code issues?
As far as I know,
Should I direct that question to Mr. Crosby? Do we still have fire or building code non-compliance issues in the theater?
We still have the one issue with the dressing room and the emergency egress. The chief and I have looked at that with the manager, working something out.
So it's being addressed then?
Yeah, that wouldn't affect the movie part. That's only if we have, that's in the dressing room area below the stage. And that part, it would not be affected. The movies would not affect that part because we would be downstairs for the movies. If that answers your question.
Anyone else?
What's our action step that we need to do to push this process?
Well, I think we just need to move this to our next meeting and cast a vote. But I do appreciate the effort that's gone into this, and I think it demonstrated, and I do believe you're very conservative, and that's where we want to be. Don't get me wrong, we don't want to be surprised on the negative side. We want to be surprised on the positive side. And I think you're going to make more money off Cokes and popcorn than you believe. So,
we hope so.
Like that. Jack?
One other thing I forgot to thank Mr. Stevens back there. He's working tirelessly. Every time you go by, he's got that door open and he's bringing people in. And if you all, anybody here hasn't visited there, please go by and see. First Friday tomorrow night would be a great time to go in and just, I think he's got some, yes, some
I have a Wild West show tomorrow night. I have a Wild West show tomorrow night.
Wild
So you all
West.
come by and see us.
Yeah.
They start about 6:30, 7 o'clock.
Bob's been a great addition to that theater, and actually, I think that, it shows not only on his face, but in the efforts that's going on at the theater. I mean, he's very excited. You can tell he loves what he does.
We call it infectious.
Absolutely.
Affects everybody.
Okay, anything else? Anyone else? You got one?
Yeah, just a point of information, when you're upgrading the sound system, do you have some money to bring in an audio engineer to take a look at what's really happening when you go to 5.1, 6.1, or 7.1?
That's correct. During the bidding process, these are not only companies that we're looking at to do that, but these are businesses, but these are audio engineers in themselves. That's the most. Worst thing you can do is bring somebody in the theater that first time to show that first movie and it not blow them away, because they will not come back.
Thank y'all very much. We need to move on, so thank you, appreciate it. Okay, we have Mr. Mark. Welcome.
Yes, I think this is the place to talk any item, any topics for our city of Canton. And I think this is the kind of 18 minutes talk. Yes. Yes. My English is no good, so please think, please imagine. I explain something, then please imagine my keywords so that you could understand more than I could try to explain. Yes, I pointed some, last year I pointed at slow business, and I asked the city council to help, how to help small business here so that they could survive. As you know, IMF had the economist forecast slow business could last 10 years since 2008. Then we could have another 5 years some slow business. So we have to do something, and then city council, city mayor could help small business so that we could survive here. Yes. Okay, my idea. I would like to explain my idea. Before I start, I would like to ask you, what do you think of city of Canton? What is the impression of the city of Canton? What is the characteristic of the city of Canton? I think it's a good neighbor, good natural resources, good environment, and peaceful and quiet. But this is the typical words of the ordinary cities in America, not so special. So I want to give some special meaning, special characteristics to the city of Canton. Just like some special meaning, like Academy City of Canton, like Music City of Canton, like or Internet City of Canton, Scholar City of Canton. So my idea, my personal idea is make City of Canton plan for the art City of Canton, like change, reform. This is an ordinary city, but make some develop. Then City of Canton could be changed much. It takes a little time, 4 to 5 years to make a master plan to how to change it. And then all the artists could be needed to help to, but it takes some money and some idea man. But it's easy, not some big money needed. You could, city mayor could send a letter to the famous art school principals and invite them to join, plan and build a city of art city of Canton. Then they willingly join us. And then you could give some street name from the art school name. This is art school name, street. Then they could be very happy to make their city name here, art school name here. And then you could invite Home Depot and Delta Airline and then some FedEx to join build here. Then they could open their safety box to pay some money to build the city of Canton. Then you could advertise their company name at the street. Then they could be very happy. As you know, LA Olympic is the first successful Olympic commercially. In the past, all the Olympic Games made spend more money than they make, but from the LA Olympic made more money than they spent. So there was a super competition after LA Olympic. They want to invite some Olympics. Same matter. I think we could make some good investment sponsors. For your reference, I have one idea. For reference, this is one my memory. In Korea, there is one small town, very small town. 20 years ago, one idea man visited one small town, his born town, city mayor, and explained, change the city with a special meaning, but city mayor denied it. He visited another neighbor city and explained and denied again. And third, fourth city say yes, and then they build a new city for the Butterfly City, Butterfly Festival. Just 2 weeks in a year, more than 2 million tourists visit and spend money, $50 million, only 2 weeks. And then year-round, they visit. Every day, more than 100 school bus stop, and then school, elementary school, middle school, high school boy visit the museum, Butterfly Museum, and they could see the beautiful flowers. And then all 50,000 population, residents, work for the volunteer to help the tourists. They make money. I think that we could build a city of Canton like that manner. There is a very famous art city like Santa Fe, like Soho, Manhattan, New York, and what is it? California, San Francisco. This is very famous art city, and the Firenze, Italy, and Salzburg, Germany. We could benchmark those famous cities, and then we could make a Canton style art of city. And unfortunately, there's no famous art city in the Southeast America part. No famous cities here. So once we build, then all the many people could visit as a tourist here.
Mr. Parker, could you kind of face, I have missed a few words, I gotta tell you, but could you kind of face the council so I can see the
yes.
way? We do have some time constraints,
I'm
so
sorry.
take another couple of minutes and then we need to move on, but thank you.
Yes, I think this is more important. I think.
You're probably right.
If they accept, then you must follow.
I think a good example is Helen. I mean, I love Helen. I'm up there every 6 weeks or so, and that's a destination. If you've ever been up there on a weekend in a biker festival, there's 1,000.
Let's let Mr. Parker, go ahead and
Yes.
wrap it up there if you will,
Okay.
as quickly as we can, so we got a good bit to go here.
Okay,
Thank
this
you.
is I would like to say last words. If you send my idea to the ashtray, like a junk box, then nothing happened. If you imagine my idea with properly, or with positively and constructively, and then firmly, then we could change something. And the next generation could remember the city mayor as a beautiful dreamer.
Yeah, we'll do that anyway.
Yes, last year I was here to talk about BOI license, $2,000. The city, $750. And this year I received another letter saying 2,000, and Cherokee County, $750. So I'd like you to change something.
I understand. I think, did we address that at all before? Well, you brought that before us, once before. You mentioned that some time back, right?
Oh, last year.
Yeah, last year.
But this year, same, $2,000 I have to pay. But Chelsea paid $750.
I think we'll ask our city manager to give us some guidance there relative to the comparisons between the city and bring that to our next work session, which will be November. And let's take a look at that to make sure we're not out of line in some way with license fees there. You can have that.
I think that wasn't that reviewed when the alcohol ordinance was revised last year? I think those comparables were reviewed at that time, but
we didn't make any changes, or?
I don't think so. But we'll be glad to take look at some comparables and put that on the.
Thank you, Mr. Mark. Thank you very much. All right. Consent agenda. The items there are the approval of the September 20th council minutes, and acknowledge of the financials 2012 August financials that we have in our package. Have a motion to approve the consent agenda. I have a second. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All members voted for the motion. Okay. Update on our fire protection 5 to 10 year plan committee. Mr. Cummins.
Yes, we had a meeting on the 27th. Purpose of the meeting was to review or discuss a proposed funding method that Mr. Beersford had developed or was proposing. He withdrew the discussion of that method, and a motion was made instead to engage Ross and Associates to prepare a fire district fee study. That motion was seconded by Mr. Huffman. Vote of 2-1 was made to bring that recommendation to council that we undertake that consultant study, and so that's why the Ross and Associates agreement is on the agenda as a committee recommendation to discuss and possibly move forward.
Okay. Any comment? Mr. Mayor.
I would say that we'd like to withdraw the associate agreement with Mr. Ross and make another proposal. And it entails good news and bad news, which we're all accustomed to.
Yes.
First of all, after many months of discussion on how best do we gain the needed revenue for our city fire department, we have reached an agreement with the mayor. This agreement will move the project ahead so that we can start building the new fire stations. At the council meeting of October the 18th, I intend to recommend that the council approve a resolution to call for a bond referendum to raise funds for improving our fire service, including the construction of the 3 new fire stations. The referendum should be held at the earliest date possible in 2013. Now, that's good news because of all these months we've spent back and forth. We have reached the conclusion, and I think it's agreeable that we're going to move ahead with this project. Now for the bad news. This goes to the media. The media will not have the opportunity for us to be bickering and acting like a bunch of crazy in-laws and outlaws, and we're going to be able to move ahead with the project. So storyline for the media is going to slow down a little bit, but we do appreciate the coverage.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bryan.
Yes, sir. I'll be quick. I'd just like to say I support bond referendum. That's a old familiar idea that some of us floated, over a year ago, a year and a half ago, and I think we had to go through this process. We have gone through exploring all possibilities. You know, we said we were going to be engaged and involved city council, and by golly, we're living up to our promises, but we have come back around to that, and I'd just like to express my thanks to everybody that's worked so hard on this fire services issue for the last year and a half, and the bond referendum has my full support, and I certainly hope the taxpayers will support it, because we have to improve our fire protection.
Mr. Mayor, this might come to some as a kind of a surprise, maybe not, but in some meetings we've just looked at the picture and said that we can get bond money probably in the neighborhood of 3%, plus or minus, and we'll be paying for it for 20 years, possibly. And I'm pretty confident that interest rates will be moving forward, maybe not this year, or maybe not next year, but in the next 5 to 10 to 20, I'm sure it will be, and we'll be paying it off with cheap money. And I think this was one of the deciding factors to where we all, the mayor, the council, we all kind of got together and said, we're for this project. The money will be there to build these when needed, and the city will be able to prosper with a very low cost to the individuals and residents. Mr. Rogers.
There's always a dissenting voice, but I have already talked to my colleagues, and I have always opposed the bond referendum for one primary reason, and that is that the bond can only pay for the buildings and not the staff. We're still going to have to figure out how to staff it, and that's going to require some other things. And the other opposition I have to a bond, but I'm not going to oppose this, I want to make that clear, is that like on the reservoir, we borrowed $8 million, the previous council borrowed $8 million to finish the reservoir, and we've been paying interest on that $8 million ever since 2009. We still have several $1 million left that we're still paying interest on. Same thing with the bond issue for the fire department. We're not going to build all 3 fire stations at the same time, I don't think. But we're going to have to raise the staffing, and if we raise the staffing, we're going to have to look at something like the Ross Associates or something else, because we can't just raise general revenues, because if we do, I just want to give you an example. If we needed to raise $1.3 million for staff for 3 fire stations, we've got 9,500 property tax participants, 1,230 are seniors, of which only 176 pay taxes, and 200 non-taxable entities. So that's 8,070 taxable households. If we were to raise to $1.3 million, we'd have to raise the general millage rate 30%. And if we do that, the seniors would pay approximately $8,000 based on over what they paid last year, which is about $6.76 a household. But that's not really the truth, because only 176 of those seniors pay taxes, and that's $47.43. Everybody else in the city would have to pay $163.75. So my contention with this is that we still have to go with something like the Ross Associates to pay for the staffing of the fire department. And that's basically all I wanted to say, but I am going to support the bond referendum.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Yes.
In response to that point, it's an excellent point, the fire stations, equipment for the fire stations and a complete package is for the bond referendum. In the agreement package that we struck, we also discussed operational expenses. And as soon as we get this bond issue going, and then we will be seeing, probably in 2014, the additional personnel that's going to be needed for the first fire station, then the second as they roll out, that we will have come up with either using a resource of the Ross type organization. There is another one that currently is coming in and looking at giving us proposals. So what we don't want to have happen again is the pushback of we can't raise these funds because We weren't going to call it a tax, we weren't going to call it a fee, but we were going to call it an assessment. So that assessment can be established and moved through. So that's our rollout plan.
I think that, Mr. Hopkins, go ahead.
Yeah, one last note on Mr. Rush's point. I just don't want, he's absolutely right, but it's not going to all come at one time. So the 1 point, whatever the $1 million was, it's not something that's going to drop on us next year. We'll gradually work up to this over a period of at least 4 years. I don't think it'd be the earliest we would have all 3 stations functioning. So it'll be something that we can gradually work towards.
I think this is an excellent start, because this does give us the opportunity and a methodology to build those stations, and that building those stations, everyone will share in that cost. There's no doubt about that. And yet there are certainly, in my opinion, some advantages. Mr. Huffman has mentioned one of those. One of the others is that it'd be amortized over 20 years, and the impact to the individual tax bills will be certainly less than it would be if we had added $1 million or $1.5 million or something like that to the property tax bills for 1 year. I mean, it's going to be, it's probably going to be less than $1 million, certainly for amortizing this over 20 years. So the impact won't be nearly as great as it could be otherwise. But I agree, we do have to make sure we have a method to fund the operational costs. That's got to come, and I think we've got time to do that. And Mr. Huffman said it's not going to all come at one time, hopefully. I appreciate the effort that's gone into all this thing, and I guess we had to go through this gyration to get to this point, maybe. And I think that spirited discussion is good. Of course, we went a little further than spirited, but we did end up, I think, at a point where we need to be at this juncture in our move toward doing exactly what all of us had in mind anyway, and that is getting funds to improve our fire service. That was the goal. That was the goal all along. How do we get the money to improve our fire service? We know it's a need, and we know that's what we're going to do. So, Jack?
Well, I just want to say, you say never say never. And of course, when we first came on, we had to borrow money, and I said, I hope we never have to do that again. But in this case, I think it's such a great thing that we're actually doing for our citizens. Going toward a 3, we're a 4 now, county's a 5. I'm talking to our fire people. They've assured us that they think if we do this, that we will be able to obtain a 3. And that will actually lower price of insurance for homes, but it'll also give us the great fire protection that we need for everybody and our businesses and citizens. Unlike everybody, we've all been spirited about this, and it's because it is dear to our heart. We want to take care of everybody. So I want to thank everybody for working hard on it.
Anyone else? If not, I would like to ask our city manager to, if he would, begin we will move this to our next meeting for a vote, but I would ask that he begin the initial steps of considering the bond referendum and getting for us the details that it would take, when it could be held, and maybe beginning talking to some of the bond folks, maybe some of the same ones you've already talked to, either one, it doesn't matter to me, but begin to take a look at that so that we can not waste any time in getting there. Once it's been approved and we know where we're going, we just need to proceed and not let our feet drag around. Mr. Canton.
I'd just like to thank all my fellow council members for where we are at, and that we're going to move forward, and that it's a 6-0 consensus of building fire station.
It's going to be a new feeling, isn't it? I hope. Thank you very much.
6-0 is better than 5-1.
Okay. All right, let's go to the next item here. The next item is off. Okay, item C, discussion of business license administrative fee. You had in your package there a number of ordinances from different cities that we talked about. I don't know if you had time to review them or not. I will pass these things around here. This is just the fees that I extracted from those ordinances. And actually, I didn't actually put the city of Canton's on there, but this shows that the city of Canton now, the very minimum is $125 minimum, and which is higher than any of the other ordinances that you have in there, which is Alpharetta, Austell, Cherokee County, Woodstock, and Holly Springs. And we did talk, I believe, a little bit the other day about maybe going from our gross revenue process maybe to number of employees or something like that. So if you haven't, did anyone have any comments about what's in the in your agenda package there, Mr. Harris?
I've looked at all of them, and I agree. I think, as we discussed last time, that we should go to a per employee. And I personally like the Alpharetta model the best. The only difference I would have with the Alpharetta is that they charge $90, which includes the administration fee for a home occupation. But if you have one employee, you have to pay $150. So I would think maybe one employee and the home occupation would be priced equally, and the rest follow the model from Alpharetta. And it doesn't get, some of the other ones, when you get up to larger corporations, you're talking about an $8,000 fee, where Alpharetta at 50 and above, it's $7 per employee and $150. So I think that seems more reasonable.
But if you have one employee, if there's two people there, you'd still pay what, $100?
If two people, you pay $100 plus the administration fee. I think it's $50.
Oh, okay. I missed that one in there. Okay.
Yeah, because they all had an administration fee somewhere in there. Yeah, in Alpharetta, it says an administrative fee of $50 shall be assessed in addition to the occupation tax.
Yes.
If I might ask a question. When they come to get their license, we ask them how many employees they have. And let's just say it's a new business, and probably it's minimal amount. And then, of course, hopefully they will grow and get more employees. But how do we verify number of employees?
Well, I think they put that in their application, and even if they grow during the year, it doesn't change until they come again to get their license the next year, for the most part. I think that's, I don't know, how do we verify their income today? I mean, their gross receipts. I don't think we really verify that. If they fill out an application, tell us what it is, we don't really go out and verify that, do we?
I think you have access to gross receipts via state tax records, don't you, Nathan?
Yes, sir.
Do you actually verify those for all the businesses?
We have, not for all, no, sir. We have if we audit them, if we request.
Well, you could, I guess you could audit the number of
Well,
employees.
at least do some type of spot check.
Sure.
You couldn't do all of them, but if they know you're spot checking, that might keep them a little bit more in line.
Yeah, but not all sales are taxable.
Yeah.
Most of my stuff is non-taxable.
Well, gross receipts includes, that really doesn't have anything to do with taxation, but gross receipts currently is the basis for our ordinance right now. And it's based on, margin of profitability for that particular standard industry classification index. And it's really kind of complicated. We know how to operate it, but we just don't know what all of it means, I don't think, to tell you the truth. But, Bill?
I guess my question is, have we, I always like to boil everything down to the fundamentals, the least common denominator. Have we looked at what business tax money is, or business license fee money is used for? How can we, as any money we spend, how can we justify the collection? What does that get the business, whether they pay $150 or $300 or $500? What does that business receive in turn from the city for that money they pay to the city?
Basically, what I'd suggest is the right to do business inside the city.
It's not entitled to it.
One thing though that I'm not sure that answers your question, to be honest, I think it probably doesn't, but anyone else have a better one? One thing, I think we ought to do before we really move forward with anything down the road is that we ought to once again ask our city manager to take a look at maybe Alpharetta, one of these that is in number of employee-based things, to see how that would affect the revenues compared to what we're getting right now. I think we need to kind of know what that difference is. Is it going to be similar? Is it going to be more? Is it going to be less? If it's going to be less, then we've become accustomed to a certain amount there, that there's going to be some adjustment there. So if you could also take a look at that, appreciate it. Anyone else have anything on that? If you would take a look at those, we don't really have to vote on this at the next meeting. We can keep moving with it because it's not an urgent item, but I think it's something that we do need to look at and maybe make some changes in. Anyone else? Okay, the next item, update on the pension plan committee, Mr. Huffman.
Yes, this committee's kind of been reformed, and we have some meetings scheduled. We got one tomorrow afternoon. Edward Jones will be coming in presenting to the committee. I've got another one scheduled with the GMA. I think that's the following Friday, I believe. Thank you. And we've added Laurie Waters, our HR director, to the committee, so that she, of course, has the largest amount of knowledge on what we presently have. And right now, I've been just bringing myself up to date as to what we got, so we have something to compare to. So I don't foresee us coming to council with a recommendation probably for at least a month, if not longer. And because this is a very critical thing that needs to be looked at and studied. But we're operating.
Mr. Mayor, before we move away from that topic, we've had a beautiful meeting so far, and I would hope that we could continue doing that. But on September the 6th council meeting, I was attacked along with two very reputable firms, one being here in Canton and another one, it's a national firm. And there was a litany of, I don't know how many pages, of topics that attacked myself and these two firms in reference to the pension plan or whatever we were trying to do. And in so reviewing those, because I was kind of aghast at the foul nature of was being cast aspersions upon myself and these two companies. So I took it upon myself to go back through, do some additional homework and study, and there was a number of fallacies, miscommunication. For an example, it said some council members have been enamored with a fancy presentation from a slick salesman. That is uncalled for. We had professionals to come in, make presentation. We started this process over a year and a half ago. We had an opportunity this year for us to sit down and meet with these people and ask questions and have a good dialogue. And then we voted to move ahead 6-0, and then a little later it comes back to the point where everything stopped. There was a statement made by false accusations about how much it was going to cost. They gave us a number. I stayed with a higher number of $9,000 a year to have this service. But by tumbling a bunch of numbers and a bunch of other type of issues, they came back and said, oh, that's all wrong. We're going to be paying in the neighborhood of around $30,000. I was also told that the council member who was pushing this proposal has never talked to our HR person regarding our current plan. That was true. At that point in time, we were still doing evaluations. I'm glad to hear that Mr. Huffman is going to have her involved into this. It's a great idea. But nobody else had mentioned it at the time, and I appreciate his initiative. The council member, that's yours truly, pushing this proposal was contacted by another broker who was with significant experience. I underline those two words, with the GMA defined benefits plan, and was rebuffed. Rebuffed. Now, that's important because from now on, I'll refer to this individual as Mr. Rebuff. That's his name. I do not want any names mentioned on who this person is. It's Mr. Rebuff. Now, Mr. Rebuff was able to give the council member who was throwing these things around a lot of generic questions. I referred to that in the whole process here, and there was 4 questions asked, and the group that we were originally looking at felt that they were not given the true answers. Mr. Rebuff came back with a bunch of answers. As I've done further research with other financial firms within the city of Atlanta, I find out more about this individual. Now, it was discussed that there was a lot of investigation going on and digging to come up with these statements. Prior to the due diligence that Mr. Cummings has done with the 4 questions, he was sent a generic questionnaire that he pulled out of some book and passed it on as his questions, which is probably a copyright issue. I asked about that, and he went, no, that's his. But interesting enough, after I did some research, I found out this is a kind of a booklet that Mr. Rebuff likes to use. So it's Mr. Rebuff's programs. The $9,000 is still on the table. That's firm, negotiable. Now, as we all know, our esteemed colleague does a lot of very good in-depth research, and we appreciate the efforts and everything put forth by Mr. Cummings. The extreme detail that he did on this project, I'm sure he took the time to find out more about Mr. Rebuff, but I never did hear anything particular, so, and I do not want to have any more issues about Mr. Rebuff looked into. But I did my own research, and he does have a web page, single page. He does claim that he has 5 to 9 employees, which is kind of strange. They must come and go. But what I found out, he's a one-man show. He is very limited on his resumes and details. He is the board member of his organization, but that's about it. Mr. Rebuff, I wanted to see more about him and kind of get a feel for what he is all about. So I did a further research and went online to mugshots.com. Interesting place. Never been there, try it. Looks like Mr. Rebuff has a couple of records: felony, first degree, battery. I won't go through the rest of them. So let's go back to the comment about slick salesmen so that we can recap this whole thing. Mr. Cummings wants to do business that we know a little about, as far as I'm concerned, to deal with a very local business and a national recognized firm is what that committee should be looking at. And I appreciate your patience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Well, I just address 2 points. First of all, Mr. Rebuff, I don't even know this individual. So we'll answer that question. I've never met him. If he walked in this room, I couldn't tell you who he was. Number 2, the entire analysis, and I will correct Mr. Beresford on this point, the entire analysis and every single question that was presented to the local initial proposed, was not taken out of any book other than the documents themselves presented to us by those individuals. Every single one of those questions, and those of you who have a copy of those questions, will see they refer to a specific document. So none of those questions came anywhere other than a detailed analysis of the documents provided us. Number 3, as to the cost, I can highlight and go into those documents, and will do so during the pension committee. If Mr. Huffman so desires, I can show where those cost figures came from. For example, there is a 30 basis points cost in there, and 30 basis points of $5.5 million is $17,500. Plus, there is an actuarial cost in there, and they're in the documents. So, I mean, I can do that. But I don't want to go any further on this. I want to move forward in this environment with a spirit of cooperation, and I don't want to get into he said, she said, and trying to defend inaccuracies one way or the other. So I will end with just saying let's move forward with the pension committee. That's all I wanted to do, was a good analysis. I don't care who it goes with, as long as the city and the employees benefit from it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'll accept whatever his apology.
We need to move on from that, I think. All right, the next item is the discussion of the resolution authorizing city bank account check signs. This is basically housekeeping information. I think that it's just a little bit, right, just filling in and adding check signers there. Item D is a discussion and consideration to approve revision of fire services ordinance. We're on item D, revision of the fire.
Oh, yes, thank you. In fact, that was just discussing that. Yes, we did rewrite the ordinance for the fire district. We're going to keep the fire district intact as a shell, and there's a reason for that. It really should mean little to nothing unless we decide to use it. But at present, there's no reason to use it. Now, if in the referendum for the bond for the fire station should not pass, then we might have to fall back to this using the fire district. So in your agenda item number 9, you will see a much briefer writing of the fire district ordinance. And if you have any questions, I would put that out as to be voted on, as a motion and voted on next meeting.
Okay. Anyone else? Ms. Scott?
Just a question to Mr. Dyer, since, and I don't have any problem with the ordinance and moving forward. The only question I have is, since it's a dormant ordinance, that it isn't going to be activated, should we not change the word "the city council shall levy" to "the city council may levy"? Because "shall" to me implies that we will do it, and "may" gives us the right to do it.
We can, I mean, it goes on to say, as may be established, you shall levy and collect such fees, assessment, tax as may be established. The may comes later, but we can make that clearer.
I just had a little problem with confusion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
will this hinder our first reading on this, Mr. Attorney?
No, that's the purpose of the first reading, is to raise issues like that, so.
Okay, so this is the first reading of that ordinance.
That was the intent.
Okay, that's
So I'll make that change.
Unless anybody else has a problem, I just think it's since you're letting it dormant, it should probably be made rather than shut.
But do we understand why we're going to keep it there?
Understood. Any other comments? Okay. The next one was a discussion of possible renaming Northside Parkway, and you know, we changed the name of Commerce Boulevard to Northside Cherokee Boulevard, I guess. But we didn't change the other one, which is Northside Parkway, and it's just next to it. So, you know, my thoughts is that could create some confusion perhaps. And, you know, I don't care what we name it, we just want to switch it around, call it Commerce Boulevard and rename it, even though there are 5 or 6, 4 businesses over there that use that as an address. So, I mean, you need to be thinking about that, I hope, between now and the next meeting and see. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I personally get really put out when cities change the name of streets, because it really upsets the businesses there, and it also upsets your GPS.
Anyone else?
What's the new name of Commerce Boulevard?
Northside hyphen Cherokee Boulevard. That's what Commerce Parkway was.
Northside Cherokee Boulevard. Then right next to it, connecting it, we have a
Northside Parkway.
Parkway.
That's pretty close, I think.
Pretty close, but it's
not
Parkway
exactly.
now.
We have Beach Street.
I live on a street called Laurel Crossing, and the cross street is Laurel Ridge, so I mean.
I mean, it doesn't matter to me, if you want to leave it the same, that's fine.
We have a Riverstone Boulevard, Riverstone Parkway, and one other one, Riverstone Drive, I think, because of.
Here's the other point. I want to get the correct, it's called what right now? Northside Parkway. That empties into the new Northside hyphen Cherokee Boulevard. So it doesn't go anywhere except right over into it, so.
It doesn't matter to me, one way it is. But you have something.
Yeah, I've got an idea that maybe I'd like to run by the council to consider. This Northside Hospital in the boulevard, it's going to bring other businesses and offices and doctors and nurses and everything that goes along with it. It's going to be quite an impact on our city. There's already been quite an impact on our city what Northside has done with this old hospital that we have up here. They do a heck of a job with what they got. With that said, I kind of feel like we might want to consider honoring the person that has worked so hard to bring all that to our city. And I'm talking about Billy Hayes. That maybe we want to use his name on the street there. Just a thought.
Okay.
Any comments on that?
Anyone else have anything?
I would agree. I think he's done a great job, and they've made a lot of improvements in our current hospital, and they're also adding new centers up there now. Good idea.
Anyone else? No, we'll consider all that's been said here tonight, and talk about it again, or either change, not change, or.
Well, kick it off hot good.
Okay, everybody ready to go? Now we got to talk about it. I ain't dead quiet yet. Getting close. All right. The next item, consideration to approve city managers designating acting city manager. That's pretty much housekeeping matter as well, I believe.
Well, it is. I actually sent a letter to council in June, so establishing that designation. And in reviewing the minutes, Ms. Stanton informs me that there was never a record of that appointment in the minutes. I don't know that a formal vote is necessary, but I would like it to be at least approved tacitly, if in no other way, and for the minutes to reflect that, just so that it eliminates any confusion and creates full compliance with the charter.
One of the changes we made with those charter revisions is it does require the city council to approve who you name.
Okay.
You designate upon their approval.
Okay. Right.
That was a change we made in April.
Okay. So we need to vote now?
Well, you don't have to, except I think everyone's aware I'm going to be out some during the month of October.
Yeah, I don't think we got a problem with you know, with the designee at all, and I certainly don't. And so I think if we can just wait till the next meeting, we'll move forward.
And I think the charter requires doing that at the first of every year. But
Right, calendar year, it says, yeah. So we'll maybe redo something in January there. Okay, city manager report.
Mr. Mayor, before, may I add something that I want to add to the next meeting? And I bring that and just pass it out?
As far as I'm concerned, you can, go ahead. Unless anybody has any problem with that.
I've got a couple things here that I'd like to bring forth to the council, mayor and council. One, and I'll pass these out so you can read it, because I think it's something that you will want to read first. I'm going to recommend under the business travel and special events, under the city procedures, and I've marked through some of the areas. This past week I've been spending a lot of time going through this manual and what forth. I just feel like that under the expenditures of meals, that it's a little short. It might have been good maybe a couple of years ago, but today it doesn't really fit. And I'd like to take out, I stapled mine upside down. As you can see, I've crossed out some verbiage, and y'all can read it yourselves, and then we can talk about that at a future meeting. I do have another that I'd like to pass out, and the mayor and I have been talking about this. So, ex officio, that we need to, under the administrations, under the codes, go down that way and this way. Thank you. And it's just something that needs to be clarified, and I've asked our city attorney to maybe do some clarification in here. But if you'll look on the right-hand side, section 2.22, the last sentence there, it says, and there is that the mayor shall serve as ex officio member of the committee, which the mayor knows, and that's fine. But I took and went and Googled what ex officio is, and well, what it amounts to. We just got into this thing. I don't want to waste a lot of time, but I Googled it, and Wikipedia says, and I'm going to read this one quick. A common misconception is that the participatory rights of an ex officio members are limited by their status. This is incorrect. Although their rights may indeed limited by the bylaws of a particular body, Robert's Rules of Order revised 10th revision clarifies that the term denotes only how one becomes a member of a group, not what one's rights are. It is a method of sitting on a committee, not a class of membership. Frequently, ex officio members will abstain from voting. And here's the key part. Unless by law constraints their rights, they are afforded the same right as other members, including debate, making formal motions, and voting. So maybe the council wants to consider the mayor being a full officio member of committees, or whether we want to say he's an officio member but does not vote. And I think that's just something that we need to think about, because we had the potential of having a problem with illegal meetings, and with this description, they weren't illegal meetings. So that's the reason we went to look into this further, because to have an illegal meeting, you'd have to have a quorum. If you got 4 members, a quorum would be 3. We had 2. Any questions?
Well, actually, we really don't need to go into this, other than, I assume what he was doing was make an announcement about these items to be considered at a later time. And we would, we'll just move this, if that's okay, to a work session up in November. Anyone else? Okay. I understand. I didn't come out of your report. Go ahead.
All right, several things real quick. I want to compliment David Tabian, who's done a lot of work on investigating what GFA loan opportunities may be available for us. Everybody knows that we're proceeding with our design on the wastewater treatment plant. Mr. Troxler is here tonight, but that design process is proceeding. But we may have the opportunity to qualify for some low-interest GFA financing for our wastewater treatment plant improvements. Perhaps if we can get some federal funds as low as 1.8%, the alternative state funds at 2.8% rate. But that is a several months long application and review process. We'd like to go ahead and proceed with the paperwork on it. I don't think that's premature. At some point in time in the future, I don't believe there's going to be a funding opportunity that would exceed the GFA opportunity if we do in fact qualify for it. But we'd like to go ahead and get that paperwork underway. At some point in time, we'll need a formal resolution from council that supports that. Would invite you to remember now, as we go through this process of design and ultimately of reconstruction of that plant, that we do not have revenues programmed into the current rate schedule to meet that debt service. So that is an issue that we'll have to tackle concurrent with the loan process. But just please keep that in mind. I'd like to ask you tonight, I know this is a little bit unorthodox, and I understand that, but since this agenda was put together, Mr. Kenjimi has come to me and basically asked me if I would approve him not putting up Christmas lights at all in town this year, because they've become so decrepit that they're literally falling apart. We have, for at least 2 budget cycles, talked about funding the replacement of our city Christmas lights, and in both of those budget cycles, that request has been disapproved. Personally, I think it would be a tragedy for us to not have an adequate Christmas lights display. This year, we do have a funding resource that we have not had available in prior years, and that is our SPLOST 6 program. Mr. Dyer feels reasonably comfortable that because it is a service that's been provided by our Parks and Recreation Department, and we do have a Parks and Recreation category under SPLOST 6, that we can, and because those are lights that would last us for 10 or 15 or 20 years, that they would qualify under the SPLOST program. So because we did not have an opportunity to get this on the agenda, but also because as of next week, we're in the middle of October, and if we're going to do anything this year, we really need to act immediately. I'd like to ask you to at least give us some formal authorization to purchase up to $30,000 in replacement lights for our full citywide Christmas light program. And then we'll ask for formal approval of that as a budget amendment once those numbers are finalized. But we do need, if we're going to do something, we need to go ahead and order them now.
Mr. Bexwell?
I think it would be a tragedy if we didn't have, we've got so much activity with the First Fridays, and all these other activities going downtown, and then walk away from the special season. So I would like to give the old proverbial thumbs up to you, which means that we can move ahead if council approves, and then vote on it as official issue at the next meeting, the 18th.
Mr. Rush?
Who gets the pick to design?
I think it would probably not behoove us to ask city council to agree on. If we're gonna make it this Christmas.
Anyone else? Is there any objection to that? Is there any objection to that?
No.
Would our Main Street person be volunteered to do that? Let us work on that. We really get into a sticky wicket now about who's gonna pick out Christmas lights. We're gonna be here a long time. Let us just work on that if you would, please. Camille has some interest in a grease recovery program. Did we address the authorization to proceed?
I think so. Okay.
Camille, if you want to come on up, while she's coming, she got a grease recovery program she wants to talk about. I was provided this morning at the Chamber Breakfast 8 gratis tickets to the Harvest Ball. I'm going to convey those to Miss Stanton. First come, first serve. She's got them, if anybody's interested in them.
Really know what that is.
Well, you should. Your wife's on the Arts Council, didn't you? No, she's not. Oh, bring that over.
Don't open this.
So it's Arts Council. Yeah, Arts. Yeah, okay.
This is $3 for $7 price.
This
And our lipstick.
cookies.
It's hard. It's
Did you have to bring it?
Please don't drop it. Please don't open it.
Oh, French fries.
The city of Canton has been fortunate enough to be blessed by the EPD, Daniel Geller with the University of Georgia, sorry, 154, and a few other major companies and institutions in Georgia to be endorsing a grease recycling program that we'd like to start. And quite frankly, I'm not asking for any money, I'm just asking for your support. Mr. Campaign and I will be going to HOAs with an educational outreach program. And the reason this is so important is because, as we all know, since 2001, the city has been plagued with SSO charges to the EPD. You can go on the EPD's website and look them up yourself, they're all there. Potentially, the goal is to collect enough of this yellow grease from residential homes, which is where most of our problems reside, to convert that into biodiesel to be used in our police department. So, again, no cost, just your support. That's all we're asking. So, there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you. See, no money, no pain, but this is legal.
Yes, I'm at that. That's the rest of this, yes. That's all you got. All right, I believe I don't have anything else to add to it, but we need a motion to go into executive session.
Motion.
To discuss possible litigation. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, no. We do not anticipate coming out to, we don't anticipate, we will not come out and vote on anything.